All right. Oh, look, it's us instead of the intro screen. Hi, everybody. Let's all introduce ourselves. Would our guests like to start first, saying who they are, what they're doing here?
Hi, I'm Todd, and I developed Hazmat Hijinks.
I'm Byron with Excessively Average Gamers, and welcome to our podcast, In Depth with Indies.
Yep. And last but most certainly least, I'm Spencer. Let's get started. All right, so jumping right in, you're developing a game, right? That's great. Is this like your full-time job, or are you doing this on top of something else?
No. Oh, by the way, I don't want to do the whole interview this way.
What?
Am I on screen yet?
Ah. Oh, that's one of the props I use to make models for my game with.
So, do you like sell special editions with the hazmat mask?
That's actually a pretty good idea. I should probably bundle a hazmat suit with it too, or some
Yeah.
coveralls. But it hasn't quite gotten that far.
Yeah. Yeah, and the cost could go way up depending what kind of hazmat suit you're going for.
Yeah, they're surprisingly expensive. You know,
What?
I had to learn all about this stuff to make the game.
Oh, nice. So you learned about it? It wasn't like, oh, you like this thing, you decided to base a game around it? You just had an idea and decided you'd learn
Yeah,
more?
no, I
first?
mean, I don't know, who likes hazmat suits? I guess it seems like they would be very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
In October of 2016, one of my nephews and I went trick-or-treating, and we decided to go as hazmat guys. So I got some Tyvek coveralls and some respirators and stuff, just so it's authentic. And everybody loved the idea, and nobody said. Maybe one person said, "Oh, you're doing Breaking Bad." Everybody
Yeah.
else was just sort of like, I don't know. It's just kind of unusual equipment, and it just gave me a great idea for a game mechanism.
So, before we get too far into it, let's go ahead and explain what your game is, the name of it, and how it works.
Okay, well, the game is Hazmat Hijinks, and it looks a little bit like Ship's Challenge, although it's definitely not a clone of the game. It's original. I like to say that it's a little bit like Ship's Challenge plus Mario. And you have to see these guys called the Cleaners stole Hanford's pet fox. And you just have to go collect a lot of toxic waste barrels. Why is revealed as you go along through the game. And you have to avoid a lot of different chemical hazards and giant viruses and radiation and stuff with different colored hazmat suits. So different colored suits work with different hazards. And then there's other things you can do with those suits too, and with the different items you encounter. And so there's a little story to it and some nice music, and that's it. It's all based on dangerous things.
Nice.
All right.
Did you guys check it out? Did you try it?
Oh yeah, we did. As a matter of
Yeah.
fact, I'm gonna throw some video of Spencer dying while he was playing
Oh,
up on the screen.
no, I didn't die all the time. Come on.
How far did
He's
you
picking
get?
the worst footage. I want everyone to know that. It's not that I died all the time. It was very rare. It's definitely what happened.
So if you're interested in what it looks like, it's up on the screen now, so you can see that. We have some more footage later in the interview as well.
Yeah. So, was this game difficult to make, or was it like, oh man, you just blew through it, or is it, kind of a struggle here and there, making hazmat hijinks?
Difficult. There's a lot of different. I don't know. I only gave up about 3 times in the beginning. And I'll tell you the most difficult thing. Well, the toughest thing about programming is not making the game engine. In this case, I don't even know if you can call it an engine. It's just a 2D thing. Anybody could do that really. Working out the various interactions and states of the model. But the user interface stuff was super annoying, especially getting it on Windows. Just dealing with the idiosyncrasies of an operating system, and sound and stuff like that. So that's always annoying. But definitely the hardest thing was designing the puzzles. So I had this great idea for the mechanism, and I started out with just kind of scratch graphics. I knew they could be improved, and I just felt that the mechanism was really a winner. But I made the first level, and I was thinking of Mario, so it was very linear. And I had somebody play it who doesn't really play a lot of games, and I said, "Well, what do you think about that?" And he said, "Well, it'll be great once you actually design real levels." And I thought, oh God, right. Because it was just like you're in this room, then you go to this room, then you go to this, and I knew that wasn't really a puzzle, and I didn't quite grasp what it meant to make these things.
Mm-hmm.
So then I was starting to get the hang of it, and I was making the educational puzzles. Like I was thinking of Chip's Challenge and how the first, I don't know, 8 levels or so teach you the basics of the game, and then it repeats all those same tiles for another 141 levels or something. So I was thinking more in that zone, and I got to the end of that, and I thought, okay, great. I taught people the basic tiles. Now they know how to play the game. Now I'll do the big, hairy levels like Chip's Challenge style levels. So I made these 32 by 30, and just like the first one, I divided into quadrants, and I said just arbitrarily, well, let's have the northwest quadrant be fire, and then this one will be radiation, this one will be chemicals, and I just kind of made it up as I went along, and I looked at the whole thing, and I knew this was just deeply unsatisfying. There's what is it that makes a level interesting to play? Mario levels are different because I learned after really playing them that they're about just playing. They're about playing, okay, and just a lot of action and reflexes, but just like playing around. And I didn't realize that what I had to do was emphasize discovery. And that moment when the light bulb turns on in somebody's brain, because I had so much fun designing the first 8 levels and watching people play them, and I designed the heck out of them because I had to redesign each one like a dozen times to really learn how people encounter them. And then I thought, instead of just repeating the same ideas over and over again, why not just take this novelty concept and this discovery concept and push it to the limit? Just see how far I can keep going, keeping things new and interesting and changing things and breaking it, setting expectations, then breaking them continually. So I just did that 96 times. And I think it worked pretty well.
Yeah, I agree. I think it came out great.
How far did you get?
Well, I'll let Spencer answer that because I'm terrible at platformers, puzzle games. Like, I'm terrible at that. I'm not going to reveal.
Oh, yeah. He just wants to avoid the question. Of course, that's how it goes. I wanted like a basic understanding of the game, but didn't want to spoil all of it, so I sent footage like up to, I think the force. I think I sent footage of me beating almost every one of the first worlds levels.
Oh, did you get to the factory at the end?
Yeah.
Oh, awesome! That's fantastic.
Then I did a little bit in the forest.
Right. Okay, that's good. Did you see where the suit inflates with the helium? Did you get to that point?
I didn't.
Spoilers!
Get there yet.
Spoilers!
Oh gosh, is this spoiler free?
No.
No, I'm just.
No.
Go ahead,
Okay,
man. Go ahead.
Well,
Yeah, you're good.
I have the whole long play out there, so.
That's right. You gotta give him something to look forward to. That inflatable suit.
Right.
That sounds pretty cool, though. What's that like in the game?
Okay, well, I was playing around with different ideas, and I had a lot of different possible items I could include. And my standard was I wanted each item to have multiple uses. So I just thought of, what else could you do with a hazmat suit, right? I mean, you could tear it, I guess, but that's just the same as like losing it or letting it expire, I guess. But I thought, well, I mean, it could be inflated, I guess with helium. And then it turns out that the helium D-War I put in the game has other uses too. I don't know. Should I spoil it or not? Or I probably shouldn't spoil it.
No, it's up to you. That's decently far in the game. They have to make it through a bunch of puzzles to even get there.
Well, yeah. Well, it can. I just be so pleased that people play it in the first place. So I mean, who cares anyway? Well, it's liquid helium, so it can also freeze stuff and it can also explode.
Mm-hmm.
So I got to this point where the suits were inflating, which lets you overcome certain obstacles that you couldn't cross otherwise, which makes a lot of sense actually to have that mechanism. Also, the way you control the suit when it's inflated is different. So you kind of push off when you're stationary. You can push off in any direction you choose, but you can't move until you hit a wall or something and stop. So it's almost like a different, like rails overlaid on the game screen that are sort of invisible. So when I hit that, I just thought, wow, this is great because it's a whole different control mechanism that's overlaid on top of everything. Mm-hmm. I cannot not include this.
I think that the design and how you do all that is great. Like I said before, uh, game design developers, it's an art. It really is. So it takes a certain kind of talent to be able to do game design, and you're one of those talented individuals.
Oh, you actually think so?
Of course.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, just based on sales, I wouldn't guess that, but
Well, that's a lot to
I'm
do
not much of
with
a marketer.
marketing, which is something we'll get into here in a little bit. But
Yeah, eventually. So that brings up a little question. Like you like adding all these things in the game, having these like different elements available. Where do you like draw the line, like to stop it from getting too big or you doing too much of the game?
Right.
Just
I had this feeling internally that I want all this to come full circle somehow. And it's a little bit like when you're writing a novel, unless you have it rigidly planned out. And there are some novelists that were able to do that throughout history. They tend to be very didactic, like, I don't know, maybe Tolstoy or something. And I didn't want to do that kind of thing, but you kind of know where it's going. And I guess it's just an internal sense, an intuition about whether something fits or whether it doesn't. But definitely the rule of an item having to have multiple uses and multiple purposes in the game was really important. I think there's maybe one or two things that ended up being used once, and I kind of regret that. But they just had, I just designed a level around it. So I designed the end about 3 months before the end. And do you want to hear about this part?
yeah, go ahead.
Okay, well, this is kind of interesting too, and I was thinking about maybe writing a long article about this, about the whole process, like the thought process of where I came up with these ideas. So I thought that the cleaners would just be these bad guys. They were called peons originally, and there'd be this big boss at the end, right? And so I was just always thinking about, how am I going to do the ending? How do we lead up to this? How do you defeat the final boss? And what message is this sending? What is the whole story? I mean, I know a little bit what the story is, but I didn't really have the details down. And it's so funny because the story could be told in a paragraph, right? But I did not know until the last week of the game exactly what those very fine details were that tied everything together and made it make sense. That Hanford's fox is stolen, you're collecting these barrels, and these guys are doing something with them. But what? Are they trying to poison the town? Are they, I just didn't, I intuitively knew where it had to go. But anyway, so I had it in my mind all the time that there would be this big showdown with this big boss, cliched, I know. And then I designed this level, which ended up being the final level. It's beyond the last factory. It's the very final level. I don't know if you saw the long play and saw the ending, the credits.
I did not
on YouTube.
No.
Okay, well, I have it all up there, but I did this thing, and I don't want to reveal that, but it's like, okay, that has to be the ending. So there's no big boss. It's a final big puzzle that you solve, and then it kind of hit on me that it maybe the enemy is the group, maybe the enemy is the cleaners as a whole. So they're a group. They're a group of people like the mob or the mafia who do illegal toxic waste dumping. Businesses sell, happens in real life too. Businesses sell their toxic waste for disposal at a low cost, and then they just dump it in farm fields or playgrounds or something, and the cancer rate triples. So Hanford, the idea is that Hanford found out what their scheme was, and they went to go kidnap him, but he was out, getting some coffee or something, and they just took his fox instead.
Don't forget the most important part. They also cleaned his room.
Yes, they did, because they are in fact the cleaners.
Yeah.
Nice.
And they're not all that bad. They're handy with a vacuum cleaner too. So
I need them in my house.
yeah. Oh, me too. I mean, I look at my carpet and I start to say, was that always gray? Did it use? At one point, was it white? So I like to say I vacuum every year, whether it needs it or not.
We have a gigantic white American bulldog, and she sheds hair like crazy. The floor downstairs constantly coated in a layer of hair.
Yep. At some point, you just learn to live with it, and
Yeah.
Yeah. What I always wonder is how does this stuff get in the food? It's not like a cat; they don't crawl on the table. How is their dog here in your food that you just prepared moments ago?
You know how it is.
It's one of those questions. Maybe that's your next game.
Yeah.
The first one was Hazmat. Next one is dog hair getting in food.
Yeah. Maybe Hanford's cleaning up fox hair. That's
There you go.
getting everywhere. Oh, the name. Now, does the name Hanford ring a bell for anybody? I'm just curious.
Sounds.
I don't know. I can only think of Stanford.
Okay. Well, nothing so sophisticated, unfortunately. Um, this is one of those moments I can't take credit for. Like artists, real artists say, the angels come down and, deliver an idea to you. This is one of those major light bulbs, which was crazy. I was debating on a name. I had a whole list of H names: Herbert, Henry, Henri, Harry, just everything under the sun. Nothing really fit. A lot of them had been used already. We all know, famous Harrys, Harry Potter. Um, and I was just really, I read the list to my friends, which one of these names would fit? Because I want it to be an H. I want it to be, like Triple H. And so I got worn out of that. And I said, okay, I gotta look down a different line of thinking here. And then I thought, well, maybe his name, like my middle name is Danger. Maybe there could be something else related to toxicity or danger or something. And I just thought, well, what are the worst super fun sites in America? And I don't know why I didn't think of this the first time. The worst toxic waste site in America is the Hanford Reservation in Southeast Washington, where they made plutonium. But I just have to tell you, though, and I'm not taking credit for this, but I have to tell you that moment when something is so right, it's like his name cannot be anything but Hanford. It's a beautiful moment. And, there's a lot of pain making this game, but there were a lot of beautiful moments like that. The very last level I designed before I finished production on this was the final factory. Not the nuclear lab, which comes after, but the actual last factory. And it's one of those things where I had a few design goals for it, and a certain way I wanted you to approach it. And I gave you like a pair of gloves and a helium dewar, and I wanted you, it's so interesting. And I apologize if I'm inarticulate talking about level design here, because probably some real puzzle designer out there, like, I don't know, Jonathan Blow or somebody could look at this and say, you think you design puzzles? I'm sure. But compared to where I was a year and a half ago, there's so much art to it. It's difficult to explain, but I know how to do it, at least a little bit. Okay. So I wanted people to use these tools, but be fooled in a way that was not like giving them a red herring, which is really cheap. But I wanted them to have these tools which are necessary to really finish the level, but to think that they have this other purpose, which you actually need it for. And just the way that it came together, aesthetically, visually, because you got to blend all these things. It's the pattern of movement, the way it feels, the aesthetics, the mechanics, the hidden information you put into the level, and the way it's revealed, or the way you misdirect somebody. But again, hopefully not in a cheap way, like putting an item in that really just has no purpose at all, but putting an item in that has a purpose that seems obvious given what you're presented with, but it has to be used in a totally different way. And it just came together so beautifully. That last level, I thought, man, I'm starting to get a hang of this.
Like I said, I believe 100% it's an art. And like I said in the last podcast, the game designers are they're artists. It's just another form of art.
Yeah.
Real quick, just a shout out to Reed Fitzgerald in the chat. He's digging the soundtrack, by the way.
Oh, hey, Reed.
So if the chat has any questions, feel free to type them, and we'll get to them later in the podcast.
Yeah. What do you think about the soundtrack?
Be
honest.
It's something that it didn't like wow me, like go, oh man, this is the best thing ever, but it fit. Like, it was one of those things that worked well as like background music while I was doing stuff. I never got irritated hearing it.
That's the point.
Yeah.
And I wrote some other melodies. I had to learn how to compose music for this.
Oh, wow, you composed it yourself?
Yes. Well, not
Man
all
of
of
many
it.
talents here.
Well, not all of it. I mean, once, if I learn more about music, I think I can eventually do some more interesting, complicated stuff. But I listened to over 1,000 pieces of music, just searching for the right thing. And I found this sort of forgotten composer, Robert Fuchs, spelled Fuchs in German, who wrote some serenades. And that's pretty much all he was really known for. He was kind of like a one-hit wonder of the late 1800s. And it's amazing now when I listen to it orchestrated. It's almost like, how could I ever have thought this would be appropriate for the game? But it turned out to be the melody that carries through the whole game. And then I had to write some music for the levels that you hear repeated over and over again. Because like the pattern in the early Mario games, which is what really inspires me, is it's really like the same two soundtracks again and again. And then a castle or a fortress or a ghost house has different music.
Yeah.
And I tried some stuff that was really great. I got some rags from Charles L. Johnson that I always really loved, and some Scott Joplin that I loved. And it just was so overbearing, and it's so hard to think through that. So I just wanted something that would fade into the background a bit. So yeah, but I turned it up a little bit and at the castle. I'm sorry, not castles. The what am I talking about? The factories. But the end, oh my gosh, you got to watch the long play and just see the end, because it's a Strauss waltz, and it just hits all the points I want to hit. It's got this emotion in it, and I heard that, and it was another one of those moments. This is the ending to the game. This is the ending to.
Well, I definitely want to play through it because I've had a lot going on in the past 2 weeks, which is unfortunately why I haven't got to play all the way through it. Car got totaled. Brother-in-law fell off a 25-foot ladder. It's been a crazy couple of weeks, so that's why I left more of that to Spencer here. But he has other responsibilities as well. But I definitely want to get to it.
Yeah, is that recoverable, by the way? 25 feet?
Yeah, fortunately for him, yeah, he just got out of the hospital last Friday. So
okay, well that's right at the point where it could be very bad.
Yeah,
so.
It was 3 broken ribs, some internal bleeding, broken arm. It was an ordeal, but it sounds like he's going to be good to go.
Oh. Well, speaking of family, is it hard to explain to your friends and family what you're doing with this? Does it make sense to them at all, or do they just think you're wasting your time or chasing pipe dreams?
Fortunately, I'm surrounded by very wonderful, supportive people,
and
nobody ever said to me that this is crazy. I did work on it full time until it was done. I don't know. I mean, I guess in another way of thinking, whatever my living expenses were during that time, $20,000, $25,000, I don't know. A lot of people would say that would be better spent on something else. But I just never got any pushback from people. They were just very encouraging.
Nice.
I did get people say, Todd, you've got to make it easier, right? But this is the conundrum, because you want it to be fun without being too easy, but challenging without being frustrating. And that midpoint is different for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like a journey. I want to try to take people along on this journey. And I don't know, just really encountering people play it and watch them and seeing what they're thinking just gave me some idea that maybe I've got a handle on this, and maybe I can bring them along on this journey. So each level really just focuses on one or maybe two things that you really need to know. Oh, and each world has 2 pathways through it. So all the easier levels are arranged in one pathway, and the more difficult levels are a different pathway. So it'll branch off and then kind of combine back together at the end. And then the most difficult challenges are all the secrets, which you guys probably didn't make it to the secret world, did you?
Mm-mm.
Nope.
Okay. There's a secret world. There's 32 golden barrels hidden in some of the levels, and these are the cleaners. This is the cleaners' money. That's where they keep their funds. And then there's a special world with the toughest puzzles in it. So there's different levels of difficulty, and you can actually play through to the end just by doing the easiest third of everything.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my way of making it easier, more approachable for people without dumbing it down. And then I thought, instead of really putting hints in very directly, like Chip's Challenge has those little tiles with the letter I on it that gives you information. Rather than putting hints in directly, I thought, we have YouTube now, and if you're really just stuck on something, you can just go look up the solution, right? I think that's an acceptable way to find a solution. And then there are ways that I did actually structure hints into the game where you encounter a level, and there's no way you're going to make this connection. And I know you're not. You're not going to think to put these 2 items together. It's just too far out. But then I make you go on a different pathway, and then you play 3 levels further on that easier pathway, and then the solution to that previous level is right there in front of you. where I put you in a situation where there's nothing else but these two items, and you have nothing to do but combine them. So it's so obvious. So I did, in a sense, structure hints into the game a little bit. So I just think there's a lot of avenues for keeping it challenging and difficult for people who want that, but making it kind of approachable.
Right.
Yeah.
And I imagine that's fairly difficult, being able to make it hard enough to where it's enjoyable, but not too hard to where I want to break my monitor, type of thing. So,
Right.
uh,
Not everybody's going to like it, but there are people, I took out the tedious stuff, okay? Nothing against Chip's Challenge. Obviously, without that game, I wouldn't have had the basic format for mine. Although I have to say I did start with the mechanism. That was, I explored a lot of different formats, 3D and just everything else. And I loved Chip's Challenge when I was a kid, so I wanted to do something like that because I just love the style of game. But there are levels in Chip's Challenge which just have these, I guess, tedious elements which appeal to certain gamers where, I forget the name of the level, but there's like 50 dirt blocks in a row, and you've got to push them into water tiles, just like drag them out somewhere and push them into water tiles again and again. Then you get to this room where these fireballs floating around, and if you get the timing wrong or screw up, you go back to the beginning and you've got to do these dirt blocks all over again. So basically, I took out all that kind of stuff.
mm-hmm.
I don't do anything to really be mean to the player or hurt the user. Obviously, some people will think it's me being mean to them, but really, I just want you to think. The only place I allowed some trickier elements was in the warehouses to give them a distinct character. So I deliberately allowed some kind of nasty tricks like viruses that kind of seemingly pop out of nowhere, or some things that are a little bit trickier. And then the factories, I wanted to be a little bit more action oriented, not so puzzle oriented, just to give it a variety of styles.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, and then in the special world, I just took out all the stops and I just made it really, just really tough. There's just some secrets in there that are so wonderful. I'm just waiting. Oh, and there's a real world puzzle too. I'm waiting for someone to do.
What?
Oh man. Getting
Yeah,
all
you can
set
only
up.
solve it in the actual physical world.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's like a scavenger hunt. I meticulously planned, and it's out there waiting for somebody to figure it out.
That's actually really freaking awesome. I haven't
Heard it here first.
Yeah, I haven't ever heard of that. That's
Yeah.
freaking awesome. We're gonna have to explore that.
Yeah. I'll definitely share my footage so
Yeah.
you can see. I'm not going to hoard it to myself and get the treasure.
Yeah.
So is there a golden barrel at the end?
At the very that would have been a nice idea. A little different than that.
All right.
I don't want to put anything out there that doesn't blend in with the environment that somebody will steal. So
Right,
this
that
is
makes
a little,
sense.
hopefully somebody will figure it out.
Yeah.
I just wonder how long it'll take. So
So it sounds like you've really enjoyed this process. You seem very passionate about it. Are there more games in the future?
well, the material that I threw away could make a whole game, and I've got a notebook filled with ideas for a second and a third game, which has nothing to do with Hazmat Hijinks. And I just don't know. I mean, porting it to Windows really was the straw that broke the camel's back and made me think I can't really do this anymore. I have to admit, just the long hours of isolation. And I took a lot of breaks. I traveled extensively last year. I was on the road for a month. I went out to see the eclipse in Wyoming
Oh no.
with a very good friend, and I was on the road for 3 weeks about a month ago. I saw my friends regularly because I read this article, it just came out somewhere, that some developers who have released these games, even successful ones, like one of them checked into a mental institution for 3 days because there's this giant void in his life. And believe it or not, when I finally got the Windows version out, and I'm not a Windows programmer, although I used it a long time ago. That's how I played Chip's Challenge. I just had to learn all the stuff, like deal with the bureaucracy of Windows and just the idiosyncrasies, and it just wants things a certain way. And why isn't this working? I'm doing it all the way it's supposed to be done, and everybody's suggesting workarounds. And I don't want to do workarounds. I want solutions, but it just feels bad to go with a workaround, And just the long hours of being in front of a screen. At the end of it, I just thought, I wish there was, there's so much I can do with a computer. There's so much I can communicate, and so much I can do that, in totally, modest way. I really mean this very modestly, that not a lot of other people can do. But it can be so painful at times, and if you release it in the world with just out a clue on how to get people to notice it, that's painful too. Just thinking that nobody's ever going to appreciate this thing unless I can get a handle on, how to. I don't know. I'm working on that, but
the marketing seems like one of the most difficult parts for.
Oh yeah, I wanted to ask you about that because you guys probably actually play games, right?
Yes.
Okay. Well, that's good. I mean, that's good. But I have to be honest here. I've never owned an Xbox. I've never played a multiplayer online game. I've watched people play them, and I know they get a lot of GTA stuff like that. Really fun for them. I think Fallout's really interesting, but I mean, my gaming experience kind of ended with the Super Nintendo, to be honest, and SimCity. Okay, and then I kind of took up Minecraft, creative mode only. Okay,
Yeah.
I couldn't even craft a roll of paper towels. I just, it's for me, it's just creative expression, just building things. That's what I really get out of it. But so I talked to this guy on Reddit in February when the iOS version came out, because I was an iOS developer, independent. I've never actually had a job. And that thing is getting really hard too. It used to be you could just release stuff to the market, and the market was so undersupplied, people would find it fairly easily and buy it, and it's so much more competitive now. So that market's a little saturated. And then I kind of got burned out on that, and I just said, well, why not just put all my energy into making something that is not made to fill a market need, like a utility app or an almanac or something. Do something that has some emotion in it, some art that has some meaning, and just go all out. Do it, go for a year, go for a year and a half, whatever it takes. Go all out, and that's why I did Hazmat Hijinks. So I talked to this guy, not knowing who he was, and he ended up being a lead developer on a mobile game that a lot of people would know the name of at a major game studio. And so we got to talking, and he had some criticisms of my game, of the user interface and some things, which I, considered. But he said that, for the price, release it on Steam, $14.99 might work. So being kind of ignorant, I just said, okay, that sounds reasonable, because if you spend 15 minutes on average in each level figuring them out, that's 24 hours of gameplay for the whole thing. And the long play alone, if you know what you're doing, is 4 hours, and that's longer than Super Mario World. So I don't know really anything about pricing, but I started at $14.99 and had a launch discount, and I got this complaint on Steam. Some guy who was really, you can go read it on the community page, not a very nice attitude about it, but like I was crazy or something. And I mean, I'm not even trying to make a bunch of money here. I just wanted to be taken seriously. So I lowered it to $4.99. What do you think is an appropriate price?
That's always the question, is what pricing it should be.
That's the question we always ask the developers, because that seems like a really difficult part too. That's actually a part of one of the questions that we ask. How do you go about figuring out what's an appropriate price?
Well, I'm the wrong guy. I'm the wrong guy to ask that. Sorry.
But I don't know. I mean, for the game, I would say $5 is cheap. I would say that's a very, very good price for that.
Okay.
I think it might be the right price, like $5.99 or close to there, because a lot of it is you're just a complete unknown. They don't know a lot about this game. What they're going to see the artwork first, and that's what most people are going to look at and be like, oh, this isn't a $15 worth of artwork, because they just, people are picky about different things. But
right,
like for the content itself, it's definitely worth, I'd say, like $10 for sure, $15 probably. But like, again, your first game, you want it to get to as many people as you can, so $5 isn't a bad idea.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know if I can do another one.
Oh, well, that's it.
I probably could if I had some sales, something to lift my spirits, I guess.
Yeah, and that's part of why we're doing this podcast too, is because we want to give people kind of a window into the life of an indie developer. I think most people don't understand. Consumers don't understand the kind of work that goes into it. I think when we had spoke before, you said you had worked on this game for 2 years.
Oh no, well, just the initial game was roughly a year, but that's full-time work. And then getting all the versions out, Windows, Mac OS, the translations, all that stuff, that was another 6 months, and that just ended.
Yeah, I
So
mean,
it's been a year and a half journey.
that's a lot of work, and then people don't realize the kind of work and dedication that it takes to do
Yeah.
to provide this entertainment for people. So that's part of the reason why we're doing this, so people can get a window to look inside that the life of a developer.
Yeah, well, it's not much of a life, I guess. It's pretty
You're not selling it here.
pretty isolating.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
takes
but you
it
get
takes a lot of dedication.
Yeah, but there's a lot of time spent making machines happy. And at a certain point, if the result is not extraordinary, I wouldn't do it for any other reason, okay? I'm really done with computers. I wouldn't take a job as a developer at some corporation making, I don't know, whatever they call that crap, middleware or whatever. I would only suffer through this kind of work, dealing with this garbage like junky .NET APIs in order to make something really extraordinary. I don't know if I made something extraordinary, but it's only worth it if it's top notch.
Right.
For me, maybe for other people, they can do programming as just a job. And then there are those guys I read about on the internet who just get excited about every single latest web technology, and I think they're kind of nuts. The web is so junky. There's all these layers of things, and websites are glitchy, and I hate it. I would never ever be a web developer.
All right, so
Are you guys web developers?
no, I work
Israeli saw you.
mainly with Linux server monitoring and software stuff like that.
Okay.
So we got about 15 minutes left for the podcast, so we're gonna go ahead and get to a few questions we have before we tell everybody where we can find everything. So
Okay.
we have a couple. I have a couple of questions for people that are looking at it on the business side. So you're the only developer, right? It's solely you. Do
Right.
you have a business like an LLC, or how do you handle that?
Yes, I've always had an LLC for my various businesses.
Okay.
National Spork.
There you go.
And then, how did you fund the game? Obviously, it took some
Well,
time.
Frankly, I could have made the game sitting on a park bench, sleeping on a park bench. It didn't. The funding really was paying for the professional translations, which wasn't much, just a few $1,000s, and I guess I bought a copy of Logic and new computer, which I didn't even really need. I just paid my living expenses out of savings for the year and a half, so that's it.
So obviously, what we're doing here is hopefully some marketing for you. But any other plans
Oh,
for your marketing? Do you have any other ideas at this point? We touched on that a
yeah.
little bit, I know.
Well, I'm just gonna contact every YouTuber imaginable. I'm gonna, contact. There's different things, different topics the game touches upon that might be interesting to people. The game is not, even though you're cleaning up toxic waste, it's not meant to send a message about that. That's just a theme that came along for the ride. Okay. I certainly believe in that theme. I don't see why it should be controversial that we shouldn't, pollute the environment. But it's not a game designed to try to convey some kind of message. It's a game meant to, you're meant to wear these hazmat suits and figure out these puzzles. So the other stuff kind of comes along for the ride. So I'm thinking about reaching out to people who, there's a level where you've got to eliminate some light pollution. There's a special level where you have to help out some honeybees. So that's kind of a weak thing to do, but I'll at least reach out to people who would be interested in specific elements of the game in any message that it's conveying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Right.
I agree.
Somehow, I think somehow I have to communicate to people, and this is true of anybody who has a similar project. Communicate to people why this is special. You seem to think that the levels are well thought out enough that the content is very good.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at it, it doesn't look like a lot of other things out there, and you might pass it by, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Which is partly by design too. I mean, the way it looks is a choice, not a compromise. It wasn't that if I only spent more months on the graphics, they would have been more, detailed or something. I was just very happy. I just wanted it to look like an old game.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't have an audience because I'm not. There's people who are very good at attracting an audience and who love to communicate, and I just like to work. So I don't know. Do I go build an audience doing some totally different thing, blogging or something, and then just hoping they discover the game and that things all tie together? Do I reach out to people? I honestly don't know, but I'm going to try everything I can. Luckily, it doesn't really cost a lot of money.
Yeah. So, how would you describe your game to someone who's never played games? They don't really know anything about them. Just like try and sell it to them.
Yeah. I guess it's a game about the joy of discovery. That's the best way to describe it. Very simple game. And then of course the boilerplate, description. You wear different hazmat suits and take this journey. It's an adventure, puzzle adventure, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably not the best way. I could think of something better.
Oh, but we need it now.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well,
no.
I think the discovery. Okay, it's a game. You know what the real message of the game is?
Mm-hmm.
Somebody might look at it and think that the message of the game is protecting the environment, which, by the way, I do believe in, but that's actually not the message. The message is thinking. You can figure stuff out by thinking, and when you encounter a problem that it doesn't look like there's any way to solve it, and I've watched people do these things, in my own game, and I love it when the light bulb comes on, when they have the eureka moment. If you just look at it from different angles and you learn to think creatively about it, you can solve these problems. So the real message of the game is that it's fun to think about stuff and solve problems. And if you just are patient and you just keep attacking things, and it's all structured so that you can do this, you can solve all of these problems. Because they don't really require special reflexes, special timing. There's a few levels where I have some reflex action required or some timing. Mostly it's just an insight that I want the player to have, a realization. And I think that everybody is capable of that, of learning how to think really creatively.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's anything I want to convey with this game, it's that.
I think that's a very good description.
All right.
Thanks.
So do you want to tell people the best way to find your game, a good way to stay up to date on what's going on with it, or how to find any other social media you're on if you decide to start trying to advertise through there?
Yeah. Well, the game is on Steam, Hazmat Hijinks, and it's on the Mac App Store and the iOS App Store. I've got a Twitter account. I don't do a whole lot with it. It's just at Hazmat Hijinks. Mm-hmm. It seems like information just flies through there way too fast for anybody to really catch it. But if you check my website, hazmathijinks.com, there's an FAQ there, and I am thinking about writing some longer articles describing some of this process and elaborating some of these ideas, maybe helping out some other developers on specific things I learned. So I guess I'll post that stuff there. It's not very sophisticated. I don't have a special RSS feed or anything yet. People said I should be marketing this as I was developing it, right, or blogging. Mm-hmm. But my mind was so shot from developing this game. What time do I have to write excellent blog posts or think about that? So that's like a whole other career, which
Right. Yeah, I get that. And if you're interested, the website is right down there in the description, so you can find it there. And another question from last question from me would be, what advice do you have for um, developers, other aspiring developers? What's the one thing that you would say you got to do this?
Huh. Put your heart into it. Don't worry about making money, and don't worry so much about making something that everybody will like. And I know that you might get kind of smacked down, and I've been through this process before. I've never made a game before, but I've made a lot of different apps. And don't be so concerned about making something that is very marketable or that everybody likes. It's much better to stretch yourself creatively and see where that leads, and just do the very, very best you can. You may only have one chance in your life to do the very, very best creative work you could conceive of. And it's irrelevant whether it ever any money, because you can either make something very compromised and maybe make a little bit of money, or make something really, really great and maybe never make money, but then have to go do a bunch of, shit work. So you might as well do your very, very best and just see where it leads. So just put your heart into it. Do what you really believe in.
I think
I can't claim it's worked out for me yet, but with the apps I had on the App Store, I was able to buy a house. I never became an app millionaire, but I was able to buy and pay off a small house and do reasonably well. And that's fading right now, so I have to shift into something else. But I really believe in that. Just put your heart into it. Be heart-centered.
Mm-hmm.
More than worrying about money or worrying about pleasing people or an audience. I still think that's the right path forward.
Nice.
I think that's some great advice. I'm personally working on that myself. Stop worrying about what other people think. Do you? And
right.
Yeah, I think that's some great advice. All right, so
is that really it?
Well, we're getting real close to that hour mark. You got 7 more minutes.
Oh gosh, what do you want to talk about?
Well, do you have last thing you want to say to the audience?
Well, no, I could keep going. There's so much that's interesting out there, But I don't want to be the one who's always talking, because I'm very verbal and I tend to talk a lot, so I don't want to take up all the time, suck all the air out of the room.
That's what this interview is all about. We're interviewing the developers. People aren't coming to listen to us talk. They're coming to listen to you talk, man. So that's what this is all about. All right, for the last thing, what's your funniest story that you have from development of this game?
Well, oh gosh, there's just so many times I would test a level on one of my nephews, especially Cole, and I would just sit next to him and watch him play and look at his face and look at the screen and just see him scream, either with delight or with like terror and frustration, like, why are you doing this to me? Why are you doing this? There are, believe it or not, there are a lot of things that I changed, and I really reworked and rethought. Like some of those warehouses were twice as big and just really, really hairy to get through, because they do get a lot more difficult later on. I just wish people could encounter those, because I've got to say, and again, I don't want to talk myself up so much. A lot of these ideas just kind of came to me, and things kind of came together in a beautiful way. So I don't know if that's a skill that I actually have or it's just happenstance. But some things I really think in these levels came together in such a beautiful way that when you finally get the answer and you see how it's all structured, I would just love people to experience that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, where your screams turn from terror to delight, right?
But it can go both ways. It's like, it's so hard to tell when somebody's crying or laughing, It's, but the ideas in it, I think there's just an endless parade of ideas, which excites me. And I couldn't stop having ideas. I mean, I could have gone on for another 96, but I had to stop. Oh, you know why I had 96 as my sort of goal, right?
What is that?
Does anybody remember?
Dang it. Isn't that how many, was it molecules is in? No, it's not the right word.
No, that's Mario World. There were 96 goals to finish in Mario World. So I thought if I get to 96, I'd have a pretty good game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's one of those nice numbers for computer people that's divisible by 2, so it's very pleasing to me on that level. Although I know some people are looking at it like you're just 4 away from 100. Why didn't you do another 4? And it's like, no, it's 96 because it's 32 times 3. You know.
Yeah, yeah. Well, look, man, we really appreciate you coming on
Yeah.
and discussing your game with us. This was a fantastic interview. I really enjoyed it.
Me
I
too.
enjoyed it too, and I hope your channel does really well.
I appreciate
I
it.
think it's is this so? Is this something that you are really passionate about? That you just want to? Are you doing indies or just what's the
So,
focus?
so we have a few different things we're doing. The thing that I enjoy the most, actually, though, are these interviews with the indie developers. That's what I am most passionate about. I really enjoy talking with y'all, getting behind the scenes on how you create a game. So this is what I'm personally most passionate about. But we have a few different things that we have going on with the channel. But indie games are one of the things that we want to cover on our channel. But this is a separate podcast. We live stream it to our channel, but we also will have it hosted on iTunes, everything like that.
Right.
That should be coming out hopefully around mid-month, or maybe like August 20th, somewhere around there.
Okay, nice. I'm definitely going to keep watching and see what happens.
Oh, that's awesome, man! And if you have any other game ideas, you just get the itch to make another one. We'll have to have you back on.
Well, there's one I have that, gosh, I think it would take a staff because I would have to make a 3D engine. There's no off-the-shelf engine that's really appropriate for what I want to do. It's very different, and there's a lot of potential for that. But that's a multi-year project. So I don't know. We'll see if I can finance that somehow. I might just plunge in and do it. But one thing about me is that when I decide to do something, I don't want to devolve into self-praise, but I guess it's important. No, it's an important thing to learn. Okay,
Mhm.
I really commit to it. I don't.
Right.
If I say I'm going to do something, I actually do it. So when I say it, I really, really mean it.
Mm-hmm.
I I knew I would finish this game from the first day when I decided to do it.
Mhm.
But it's interesting that I was able to not only maintain the enthusiasm through the hard times, but actually increase it, because there's moments when you don't see how you can possibly end it. Forget about will it make money, will I make it through this, what am I going to do when it's all over, but will I just be able to figure out an ending to this thing, or keep the variety going, right? But I just had to trust that I could keep coming up with ideas and keep making it better and better. And so many things came to me that filled that need. This is very important. This is an important message I want creative people to know. I've talked to a lot of people, like aspiring novelists, who would say, I'm working on this project, but I've got a lot of ideas. I want to save them for the next project. I don't want to put it in this one. And I think we all kind of think that way. Sometimes we all want to parcel out ideas because we treat them as though they're scarce. And I believe that if you treat ideas as though they're scarce, they really will be scarce.
Mm-hmm.
I think you have to put everything you have into your current project. Don't save it for the next one, unless it's not appropriate. That's different if an idea just doesn't fit. But really get away from this. Even I had it throughout this project, a glimmer of an idea, and it's like, there's this level in the special world where Hanford is eliminating some light pollution, which is a pretty important issue for me because I just love the night sky. I love stargazing. I even drive out west just to look at the stars. Sometimes it's a long drive for me. And I was starting to think this could be a whole game. If I put it in Hazmat Hijinks, it's almost like throwing it away. I'm going to ruin the idea. It's like, what? I might never get to do that again. It might only be like a one-shot, kind of idea. So, don't be afraid to put the best ideas you have into your project. Treat it as though it is deserving of the best ideas you have. Don't treat your ideas as though they're scarce.
Mm-hmm.
And more ideas came. And even now, I'm telling myself, I'll never make another game because it's too isolating and too painful at times. But my hamstrings are so tight from sitting in a chair all damn day. But, I keep coming with ideas. I mean, I'm halfway through this notebook with ideas. I just can't stop generating them. So, just trust in the abundance of creativity.
All right, that sounds like some great advice there.
Yeah, I think that's a good note to end on.
Okay.
Like ending on that positivity stuff.
All right, and
Well-
don't forget that you can check out his game on the Steam store, and the link to his website's right down there in the description. Any last words before we sign off?
No, just it's been really great talking to you, and I hope we can do another interview someday with, another game.
I
Yeah.
100% agree.
Exciting.
All right, thank you very much for watching. This is Excessively Average Gamers, In Depth with Indies, signing off.
All right.
Thanks a lot.